Hello everyone and welcome to my channel, myrenovation.net. Today's subject is modern apartment. Please like, share, comments, and don't forget to subscribe, and thank you so much. Our guest today is Joseph Montoya. Joseph is a principal and founder of M3 Architects in Orange County, California. Joseph brings over 18 years of experience and leadership in the architectural field. Joseph has extensive multi-family residential and mixed-use projects. M3 Architects is a full-service architecture firm. It specializes in all aspects, phases, and density of multi-family residential and mixed-use projects. For more information, please visit M3 Architects website. The main topics for today's video: what does multi-family mean? What does mixed use mean? What should I look for when buying an apartment? How can a project architect reduce building costs? Will architect be in demand in the future? What is the future for architecture? What are smart cities and eco-friendly architecture? What are the most popular future designs and colors? What does solar ready mean? How can you become an architect? Before starting the discussion with Joey today, in the next few slides, I would like to introduce some of M3 Architects' projects. Please welcome Joseph Montoya. Hello, Joey. Thank you so much for joining us today. When it comes to multifamily and mixed-use project, you cannot find anybody better than Joey. As I explained in the introduction, that Joey has many years of experience for multifamily and mixed-use projects. Today, we're going to be focusing on the most popular design, trend, and color for multifamily apartments. Also, we're going to be talking about limitation, ADA zoning, and what you watch for when buying an apartment. We're going to start the conversation with Joey today by going into the definition of the multifamily and mixed-use project.
Hi, Mo. Thanks for having me. And so you're looking for what the definition of mixed-use multifamily apartment is, correct?
Yes. Yeah,
so a multifamily project is usually multiple units. You can be as low as two units, but what I usually work on is anywhere from 50 units or above. And it could be anywhere from 2 and 3 stories to all the way up to 5 stories, and that all is with wood construction. Sometimes it can be on the ground, directly on grade, and then sometimes it could be on a parking structure, 1 or 2 story parking structure. So some of these multifamily projects can get pretty tall. And a lot of the times when they're located in urban environments, downtown areas and things like that, there's usually a mixed use component where the city will want to activate the ground level with some sort of retail, whether it's like a coffee shop or a dry cleaning or a little restaurant or even some sort of daycare or yoga studio. There is usually, and it varies, the size, the square footage that the city will require. But I'm sure we've all experienced that kind of mixed use project when you go to, downtown LA or San Francisco or even New York and Boston. So that's kind of what multifamily apartments.
Oh, great. So actually, so based on what you said, like you're saying it could be as small as 2 units. So duplex townhouses, apartment complex or apartment building, that's considered a multifamily, correct?
Yes, whenever you have an attached product, it's multifamily. A duplex is pretty small, but again, it's a multiple unit on a single lot. So that would be considered a multifamily project.
And also like the owner, my understanding also that the owner can actually occupy one of this unit, and that will call owner occupied property, correct?
Yes, the owner, or usually on these bigger units, sometimes they'll have like a property manager live there on site. But yes, definitely the owner can live on there. If it's a single, if it's a duplex and the owner lives in one, and then it is kind of more like an ADU, but again, it is a multifamily.
So the next question here is, I know multifamily is a very profitable property, but not every piece of land could be designed as multifamily project, correct?
Yes, that is true. However, at least in California, because there's a housing crisis, there's a shortage of housing. The cities and the state are loosening the restrictions on where you can build multifamily. I think there's legislation that's currently being considered where they're actually going to allow you to build, I think, up to 10 units on a single family lot.
Oh, nice.
Right now, it's getting easier to build multifamily, just again because of the strong need for housing, and because housing is so expensive. And the process usually takes so long with the cities and the jurisdictions to get it approved that that's part of the reason for the crisis. But now that sort of seems to be moving in the right directions in terms of facilitating a quicker process for getting buildings approved.
But also, I think, just correct me if I'm wrong, like with they still have to go through the planet check, and they still have to go through all the restriction when it comes to parking, sprinkler type of building, and all of that, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, for sure. You have to, there are still zoning requirements that you have to meet regardless of where you do the multifamily. You want to pick good locations for multifamily. Like in the middle of an industrial area, that might not make sense. But if it's close to schools or close to retail, that would make sense. You still have to go through the whole process of making sure you meet the height requirements, the parking requirements, open space requirements. When you have a multifamily building that has an elevator in it, then usually all of the units have to be accessible. So there's a more stringent requirement for accessibility in ADA, where
If you don't mind,
the project has to be accessible.
Can you explain the accessible meaning? Because a lot of people, they won't understand accessible when, like, as a definition of accessible when it comes
to. So accessible generally means like universal design. It's basically someone in a wheelchair or someone who's blind or someone who can't hear can still move throughout the project and either go visit someone in a unit, live in a unit, use the unit, the restrooms, the showers, the kitchen, and still be able to get to the common space areas. So it means that you have to have a certain width of door so that if a wheelchair can fit through the door, not only in your bedroom or the front door, but everywhere in the unit. Because if someone's living there, obviously they have to be able to use every part of it. In the kitchen, it means having, if someone decides to rent a unit, the kitchen cabinets underneath the sink can be removed without any special tools or knowledge, so that the wheelchair can roll in and use the sink in a forward manner. There has to be some workspace for them to be able to cut, like, use a cutting board. So there's either, it's called a workspace. So that has to be provided in the unit. Certain elements or accessories have to be provided at a certain height, like light switches have to be at a certain height. The thermostat for the HVAC has to be at a certain height. There are limits, lowest of 15 inches from the floor all the way up to 48 inches high. That's kind of the reach range that someone in a wheelchair can function in a unit and be able to use everything. The towel bars have to be at a certain height. Medicine cabinets, all those sorts of things have to be in a certain area or range so that it can be fully used by a person with disabilities. And that's just in the unit.
So that's actually very interesting, because that's actually is going to bring us to the next topics, which is what should I look for when buying an apartment? So if I buy an apartment, it doesn't mean I can just buy it and just go in and just remodel the entire apartment and put whatever sink I want, especially if this unit is accessible units.
That's correct. You have to look at the potential apartment that you're looking to buy. And I think the first thing, the biggest item you have to check off your list is, does it have an elevator or not? Because if it does, and you want to remodel everything, again, you have to meet those certain requirements. They may have not, depending on when the project was built. Essentially, if it was built in the 60s and 70s, most likely there were not much ADA requirements provided. So if you do any kind of work, there's a certain threshold of how much you spend that would require you to upgrade certain elements of the unit. So you'd have to look at putting in the proper height for the countertops, like you said, the proper sink, so that it's not too deep, so that, again, a wheelchair can go underneath. But even if you buy an apartment building without an elevator, the ground floor units, obviously, because someone in a wheelchair can access that, would need to have these elements in them as well. The second, third, fourth floor don't have to have them if you don't have an elevator. They can be normal, or not normal, but at higher heights for everything. You don't have to meet all of the requirements. So you have to check and see the codes too. Again, some of these older buildings don't have sprinkler systems, so you'd want to look to see if a sprinkler system is in the building or if something needs to be provided. There's a lot of new protections that occurred after the 70s, unfortunately, due to accidents where buildings caught on fire and people weren't able to escape in time and things like that. So pretty much every time you have an apartment building, you need to have some sort of sprinkler protection.
You brought a very, very good point when it comes to buying an older unit or an older building and try to renovate it, because there is a grandfather clause that sometimes, like if you have an existing older building, the city will let it go as is. But once you start renovating this building, the city will actually force you to follow the latest building code. So people, they have to watch with that. It doesn't mean that I have a building or an apartment and older and it doesn't have all the requirements. So if it's going to stay like that if I decided to renovate it.
That's correct. Yes, that would be part of, hopefully someone who's looking at doing that would consult, if they're not familiar with apartments and how they work, hopefully they would consult with an architect that is familiar with these kinds of codes and requirements, like us, for instance, that can help them to determine what is triggered. And if you do want to do this kind of work to the unit, this is what it will trigger, and then they can decide, okay, well, I do want to continue to buy it, and I will work with M3 Architects or someone else to prepare the plans to go to the city and make sure everything is per code.
And that's the reason why, like, when you use an architect, will save that client a lot of money, not only by the renovation part, during the design stage and also during the construction.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if you don't know what you're getting yourself into, that it could cause, undesired, it could cost more money.
Yeah.
It can definitely cost more time. And it will just be a frustrating experience for the person who is buying the building or trying to renovate it. And so they may not want to do that again. But if you hire the right professionals, architects, it will make it a lot smoother process for you.
So now, like, let's say I'm in the market and I want to buy an apartment. What should I be looking for?
Well, there's a lot of things that you can look for. The developers or owners. There's a wide variety of what they're looking for. Some people, at least when we're working with developers, sometimes they want to provide a building and then sell it at the end. Some people want it for the income for a long period of time. But I think what you'd like to do is look for an apartment or an apartment building that it's kind of maybe needs some work, but it's still in a good area, good neighborhood in terms of rents. It will meet the demand of the people that you're trying to satisfy. Because sometimes there's just an older building in a good neighborhood that just needs a little TLC, and so that would be a better recommendation than, let's say, buying an apartment that's really, really cheap that may not be in a great neighborhood. It's not to say that the neighborhood isn't great and couldn't potentially come to life. It's just sometimes you get what you pay for, so to speak, and so you really just have to do your research on what you're trying to do and how you're trying to meet the need of people.
And also I think the management team, especially if you're going to buy an apartment as part of a complex, because we all heard about what's happening in Florida and the collapse of the building due to the lack of maintenance.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. Maintenance is a big key, and I think that's always tough when you're buying an older building, because you really don't know not what you're getting. I mean, there is time for your due diligence, in that you're able to research and talk to structural engineers, or have someone come out and look at it from a structural perspective. There are signs that you can always look for, whether it's mold or rot, things like that could show a little bit of negligence or maybe not as well maintained. And sometimes the fixes are relatively easy. Sometimes they're more expensive and extensive. But that's just part of the process you have to go through when you're looking for it. And again, you can hire an architect to help you out with that. We usually work with a lot of different consultants where, we're sort of considered the quarterback of the team. We work with structural engineers, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, waterproofing consultants, Title 24 consultants. So usually reaching out to an architect, they'll have someone that can help you out if they can't help you out with something.
Okay, that's a great, Joey. And also, you promised that you will show us like one of your latest projects.
All right, so this project is in Whittier, California, and although there's, I think, over 700 units in this, what you can see on the screen here, there's only 189 units in there. This used to be an old I guess junior detention center, like a correctional facility for kids, obviously not adults. And so there was many years trying to get this project approved. And then it finally got approved. And so Brookfield is the master developer. The client that I work with is actually just bought the apartment part of it. The other units are all for sale product, but you can see it's part of a bigger master plan area. And so let's see if I can pull up here. So this is a garden style apartment, well, partial garden style apartment, partial elevator. If on the screen, you can kind of see in the foreground here, there's several buildings that are, 2 and 3 stories tall. And then in the back, you can kind of see like a whitish building that's 4 stories tall. That is an elevator served building. So this is the site plan of our project. There's 2 entry points, one here down at the bottom, and then one over here on the upper right-hand side. And so all of the buildings down here at the bottom are all 2 and 3 story projects or buildings. Right here in the middle, as you come in through the main entry, there's a little leasing clubhouse, fitness, and pool area just behind it. And then in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see that that's the elevator served building. It's got a corridor. All of this has covered parking through single car garages tucked underneath. And then in this white area that you see, that's not part of the project, but that's where like an Albertsons or a Ralph's is going to be going into. So let's see if I can. And then more specifically, these are the different, size buildings that we have on there. Some of them only have, one stair that has a group of 4 units, and then that goes up 3 stories. And then some have more than like a group of 8 and a single stair that takes care of the egress for that.
So it is very complicated project because it seems like it has like a multiple building and it has multiple units.
Yeah, so there were 7 different building types, and then there's multiple unit types. You have anywhere from a 1-bedroom all the way up to 3 bedrooms. And so usually when someone does a project like this, they'll do, a couple different 1 bedrooms, a couple different 2 bedrooms, and a couple different 3 bedrooms. And that's just to provide, a variety of options for people that want to rent. And so, here's an example of, of a unit plan of a 1 bedroom. These are construction documents. So these are the drawings that we do that allow you to pull a permit to build the building. And so this is what a general contractor would use to build the unit. And so it's kind of like a puzzle where you have a unit and you dimension everything on the unit, where the walls are, where the doors are, the sizes of the doors, the sizes of the windows and everything. And then when you go to the building plan, you just kind of show that overall piece of the unit and how it goes together. And so then they can kind of look at a building and say, okay, this building is 300 feet long, but it's made up of, 32 unit, a 32 foot long unit by 25. And so we usually have a tag on the building that tells them which unit it is, and they go and they can look at kind of the detail. Because if you tried to put everything all on one sheet, it would just be, you wouldn't be able to see. And so we have elevations, we have details, we have a whole bunch of things that kind of help them determine what it looks like.
My understanding, Joey, also that you used Revit BIM for this project.
Yes, that's correct. That seems to be the way the industry is headed in terms of using BIM. There's pluses and minuses, just like with everything of using the BIM. You have to use it correctly in order to get information out of it correctly. So you just have to be careful with that. You know, not only us as architects, but also the consultants that we use. We have to make sure they put the information in correctly. So structural, electrical, mechanical, and plumbing. And you can kind of do clash detection and things like that. So, so yeah, this is kind of what a Revit, a BIM project would look like.
You know, that's actually, it will bring us to another question. A lot of people asking, will there be a demand for architects in the future with all of this software and technology?
You know, I think that's a hotly debated item right now. There are definitely a lot of new technology and software that's coming up that allow people to more easily draw themselves. But I think there's always going to be a need for an architect, even if an architect may not look or do what they do now, because an architect has to go through training in school. You know, it's usually a 5-year program. And so, you know, they teach you a lot of things of how to, you know, design history, programming, constructability. They depending on the school you go to, you get a kind of a well-rounded idea of how architecture is and how it works. And so we're the ones who are, like we were talking about earlier, we have the expertise to not only design the building, but we have the expertise and familiarity of how to go through the building department and how to get drawings approved for permits and things like that. So even though people might be able to draw themselves by themselves or for themselves in the future, I believe people will need the expertise of the architect who has the education and the expertise of going through these very difficult and demanding processes to get a building built or approved, even in design, you know, with the planning commission and things like that.
And also, just correct me if I'm right on this statement. I think the demand will be for the architect or for the architects who will accommodate to the technology, who will actually the architects who still drafting on paper. This will not going to be demand for that. But for the architect who's using 3D printer, is using BIM, or using technology, or smart city design, eco-friendly architecture, there always going to be a demand for that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we do have to keep up with the technology. And I think actually architects are pretty good at keeping up with technology. I would say that maybe general contractors and maybe owners are a little slower to that, you know, because we're always exploring new materials, new technologies, new ways of drawing, because that's, I think, the nature of being an architect. But I think sometimes our clients kind of push back a little bit and say, well, you know, I'm not familiar with it. Is it going to cost more money? Is it going to take more time? You know, and things like that. So, but yes, I think an architect who is adaptable will probably survive the best.
I think the last thing I want to ask you, I know you for a long time, and I know that you are the code guy, and you are very good when it comes to building codes. So I just want to use this experience in this video to explain to people about the accessibilities and about the code when it comes to a unit. Can you just explain to us? Earlier you talked about accessibilities and about the kitchen. Can you just explain a little bit about that for the viewers?
Sure. Let me just see if I can pull something up on the screen here that you know, would help. Yeah, when you're doing a project that's multifamily, there's a lot of things to consider because there's a lot of people living in there. You have the accessibility, like you mentioned, life safety issues, which are related to fire and making sure that the building has the appropriate rating, you know, and has fire sprinklers. There's all these other items like mold, and things like that. But probably the biggest one is accessibility and making sure that it works, for everybody. And so, like, as you can see on the plans here, I'm not going to skip back and forth between drawings and stuff like that. I'll just tell you that the doors here allow someone in a wheelchair to be able to get into any space. There's basically 3-foot wide doors. In a normal single family home, the doors might be 2'6", so 6 inches smaller.
Are you talking about the main unit entry, or you're talking about every?
All of the doors, actually, not just the main unit door, but the door to the patio, the door to the bedroom, the door to the closet, and the door to the bathroom.
Oh, wow. And also the clearance. So people, when they buy an accessible unit, they have to be aware of the clearance.
Correct. And as you, on the drawings here, you can kind of see these boxes that are dashed. Those represent the clearances that are required for the door. So like when you're pulling the door open, there's a requirement in the code that says you have to have 18 inches from the edge of the door to an object or a wall. And that's so that someone in a wheelchair can go up and actually get close to it and pull it open. Only on the pull side, because they have to get close and pull it. On the push side, they can kind of use their feet and their wheelchair to push it forward. So the requirements are a little bit different on the push side, but basically someone has to be able to, the bedroom is obviously big enough, and the closets when they're walking are pretty big as well. But the bathroom is the one that probably has the biggest effect, because the bathrooms are probably much larger than what you're used to seeing in a single family home. And that's because you have to have certain clearances around, in and around the toilet, in and around the shower / tub, around the door for the 18 inches strike, and then on the sink. So usually you end up with these larger bathrooms. As you can kind of see on this unit, that bathroom is pretty large. You've got the door, which is 3 feet, and then you got another 18 inches before you even get to the sink. Now, in a single family home, that door would be, 2'6", and then it would be maybe 2 to 4 inches before you get to the countertop. So you're talking about almost 24 inches of extra space in a unit like this to be able to meet the requirements for accessibility.
So when you talk about clearance, so you cannot actually locate any furniture within this clearance area?
That's correct. Yeah. Well, furniture is different because furniture is not permanent. You can move a sofa, you can move a bed, but you can't move a wall, or you can't move a built-in shelf. So that's, so sometimes a bed will overlap. If you put a bed just to show the layout of the room or a piece of furniture there, that's acceptable because we don't know how someone's going to furnish their unit, but we're just showing a suggestion. But definitely walls cannot encroach on that space, and definitely not a sink or a countertop area, because that's something that someone can't just move out of the way.
And also, like, if you're going to have this accessible units, you must have accessible parking stalls for them, correct?
That's correct. Yes. So usually, I'm sure everybody has experienced an accessible parking stall, because you go to the doctor's office, you go to the store, you always see the stalls marked in blue, and they're usually the closest to the entrance of the store or the office, and that's by code. It has to be on the shortest distance to the entrance. And so the same thing happens with these projects. If there's surface parking, then it has to be distributed throughout the site. You can't just put all the accessible parking in one area. It has to be distributed throughout the site. And that's because the units are also have to be distributed throughout the site. You can't, per code, just put all the accessible units in one building in one corner. They have to be dispersed throughout. And again, that's per code, and that's because you have to give them a variety of choices as well. So you have to do the calculation based on units to see how much parking you have to provide. But usually it's about 2% of the units that you have to provide accessible parking stall. And then within that group of accessible parking stalls, one of every 8 has to be a van accessible. The only difference between the two is that on a normal accessible parking stall, it's a 5-foot wide loading area, and you can probably pay attention to this next time you're at the store or an office. A 5-foot wide striped area. The different, and then a van accessible is actually 8 feet wide. So it's a wider blue marked area for a van to be able to unload. Because in the vans, usually what they have is a ramp that comes out. And, you know, sometimes people who are disabled, they're more able-bodied, so they don't need as much space. They can get themselves in and out of their car by disassembling their wheelchair and reassembling it, or maybe they just, they have a broken foot or they're blind or something like that. But a person who's in a wheelchair, usually on the vans, there's a ramp that actually comes out of the car, and so they need that extra space for loading and unloading.
And also here in California, we have the Green Building Code and we have the AV stalls requirement. So like when you design for multifamily or mixed use project, you have to accommodate all of these codes.
Yeah, so Title 24, that's Cal Green, that's energy code. That just means that building systems that you put in your apartments have to be of a certain efficiency, energy efficiency, that they meet the code. There is a requirement too, like you said, for EV, which is electrical vehicle, which are becoming more popular. I think there's a mandate from the state that by 2035 or 2045 or something like that, they're not going to be able to sell any combustion engines anymore. So it's definitely something that is here now and will only get greater demand in the future. You don't have to do any extra stalls for the EV. You just, within what you're required for the planning department, like let's say you're required to do 2 stalls per unit, and you have 100 units, that's 200 parking stalls that you need. So there's another calculation that basically tells you, let's say you need 20 EVs. Within that 200, you can pick 20 stalls that are EV, and you just have to designate them as that. So there's not 200 plus 20, it's just 20 within the 200.
Okay. And also the solar requirement.
Correct. We have been having to do solar ready buildings, in that you provide the conduit for up to the roof, and you provide an area calculation of where solar could fit on your roof. But yes, that is something that will be occurring in the future. I think the biggest thing for that is just storage. Like, how do you store it, the energy? And I think there's new technology that's coming out probably fairly soon, thanks to Tesla and some of these other companies, that will allow the sun, that the energy that's created by these solar panels to be stored for when it's nighttime and things like that, because right now there's not much storage for it.
That's great, Joey. Thank you so much. And my last question is, how can you become an architect?
Well, at least
in California, at least.
In California, there is a requirement to get a degree from a university, an accredited university. So there's a list of, I think if you go to the AIA or some website,
NCARB also will explain that.
Right. But basically it's a 5-year program, and it's an undergraduate degree. and you get basically a Bachelor of Architecture at the end of those 5 years. Then they have, once you graduate from that and you go start working, there's an IDP program, which is an intern development program that tries to get you to see different things as an architect in terms of logging hours on construction documents, on details, on putting together proposals, on design, a little bit of everything, because we do so much as architects. And then once you're done with that, you can take the test. When I took it, there were 9 tests. I think it's down to 7 tests, maybe. Computer tests that you have to take on a variety of subjects. And then once you pass that, then you're allowed to move to the next level, which is a supplementary exam. When I took that, that was a verbal exam in front of a panel of 3 architects. And we would go over, they would ask you questions about a project. Now I think it's another computer test that you're allowed to do at home. So it's a take home, but you have to do all of that before you become an architect. Well, before you can call yourself an architect, because you can definitely be successful and work in an office, in a larger office, as an example, where there are licensed architects, but you just can't call yourself an architect.
So now you can see, guys, like exactly like what I said at the beginning of the video, that when it comes to multifamily and mixed use, you cannot and you will not find anybody better than Joey. It is true. I work with Joey. Till now, sometimes if I have questions, I send him, and he knows. He's a building code guy. He's very, very, very knowledgeable when it comes to multifamily and mixed use. And I thank you so much, Joey. I know you're so busy. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you everybody for watching us. And the last thing I just want to say, please stay, guys, because I'm going to be showing some of Joey's project. Thanks a lot, Joey.
Thank you, Mo. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
Me too. So what do you think?
I think it's good.
Okay, great. How to subscribe to the channel. Once you click into any video, you will see this screen on your mobile phone. If you are not subscribed, then the subscribe button or the text will be in red. Once you subscribe, then the red icon will change to gray icon. So if it is in red, you are not subscribed. If it is gray, you are subscribed. Thank you so much for watching my videos, and talk to you on my next video. And goodbye.